Most Nerf herders, listen up! Welcome back to the Captain's Commentaries. In this second episode, we are going to be covering, as promised, how to start your own Nerf club or Nerf war. It'll cover all the major points that you need to go over, and hopefully we'll answer any questions that you may have. The first thing that you're going to need to work out with either just yourself or the other people that you're planning to start the event with is what type of game it's going to be. There are more or less three major varieties of Nerf games. There's stock only, which a lot of HVZs are stock only, and events where it's going to be a lot of small children are often stock only, or if it's going to be indoors, it'll often be stock only. For safety reasons, obviously. Super stock, which is what the wars that we hold in our public parks are usually super stock, which for us, that means 150 FPS or lower. Now, super stock may mean different things in different places. As far as I know, there's no standard. And that's what we do in the public parks. 150 is generally, you need eye protection, but you're not likely to seriously hurt somebody unless you're shooting them at point blank range and they don't have eye pro, which we will discuss later on. And then finally, you have your ultra stock, which locally means 150 and up, which are high-powered caliburns and single drain blasters and all sorts of that sort of thing. Or single titans. You shouldn't single a drain blaster. That's just plain unsafe. But for the people who want to do the really competitive stuff with the really high-powered stuff, that is ultra stock. And you need to determine which of these you're going to be running because it pretty much affects everything after that. So once you just determine what kind of a war you're wanting to run, then you're going to need to find a location or a venue. And again, what game type you're running can have a major effect on this. Because if you're wanting to do ultra stock, it's probably going to be not a good idea to run that in a public park. Just because, once again, for safety concerns. So you might want to try to find a private venue. Either talk to an airsoft arena or a paintball arena or someone with private property. Find an old industrial area or one that's closed on weekends or something and see if you can use that. You can run them in the public, but you're going to have to be a lot more safety conscious. You're going to want to make sure that there are dedicated safety referees, marshals, whatever you want to call them, making sure that non-players aren't wandering through. And that gameplay gets halted if a jogger decides they're going to go right through the middle of your war, which some of them will do that. You're going to need to make sure that there is somebody keeping an eye out for that. For stock and super stock, that's not going to be nearly as much of an issue. Though, if you're in a public park, I highly recommend that you contact the local Parks and Rec and ask if they have a problem with it, because it's entirely possible they already have an ordinance against it. They almost certainly have one against airsoft and paintball, and they may have gone ahead and added it for any kind of projectile firing toy. So you're going to want to find out beforehand so you don't get in trouble. And it's also a really good idea, possibly, to talk to the local law enforcement. Contact the local police department and say, hey, we're going to be doing this in this park at this time. So if somebody calls saying that there's people with guns in the park, it's us. Please don't come shoot us. The cops will almost certainly still come and investigate because they kind of have to. And so you will be the one, since you're hosting or you're creating it, it's probably going to fall to you to deal with that, to go and be the public face of the event and to deal with anything that comes up, unless you've delegated it, which is perfectly reasonable. There needs to be somebody who is in charge, who is responsible, and so if the police show up, they're the person that goes and talks to them and says, hey, this is what's going on, we already talked to the park, to the city, they said it's okay, what have you. So, venue is very important. Some venues are going to require that you have insurance or liability waivers, or are going to require minimum safety standards, or what have you, and that's something that you will need to look into. Next up are the rules, and this is also very much dependent on that first one, the type of game, but you should definitely come up with your rules, sit down with the people who are going to be involved, and write out your rules. And there's lots of different game types out there, lots of different rule sets for different groups. Some people allow certain things and not others, and what have you. So you need to determine which of those rules that are out there you want to use. Definitely having the rules that eye protection is required. I would recommend having in the rules that headshots are discouraged, but not necessarily banned. Just, aim for the center of body mass. It's just polite. Whatever you decide to set your FPS limit at, whether it's stock, super stock, or ultra stock, whatever your limit is, have that determined beforehand and written down somewhere. What ammo types are allowed? Some groups don't allow half darts, which is one that's going to get you a lot of pushback, but that is entirely up to you. You may not decide that you don't want to allow things like FVJs for the obvious reasons that in the wrong blaster, an FVJ can be very dangerous. This was a singled drain blaster, put an FVJ straight through a 6-round magazine. So when I say they're dangerous, I mean it. So you might not want to allow those, or you might not want to allow any kind of homemade darts. Whatever you determine, you should have that, again, written down so that if somebody argues, you can say, no, it's in the rules, you know the rules, here they are, those aren't allowed. Alternatively, if ammo types do different things, so for us, rockets destroy shields, and we've considered having mega darts penetrate shields, so they kill the shield wielder, but they don't destroy the shield, whereas rockets blow up the shield completely and they can't use it for the rest of the round. Vortex discs usually count on a ricochet. Everywhere I've ever played that had Vortex, they agreed that Vortex discs count when they bounce off of things, just because it makes the ammo type more interesting. And so that sort of thing should be, again, written down in the rules so that if somebody asks or if somebody isn't aware, they can do that. Rules on your shields. Our group allows anything that is an official Nerf product, so the Stonewall shield, the Stampede shield, the Hydro Cannon shield, any of those can be attached to any blaster and can be used however you want. They stop anything that hits them except rockets. Whereas if you have a homemade shield or a larger shield, you can only use non-electronic blasters with it in order to not have it be too horribly broken, which has worked out very well for us. We enjoy those rules. The shields allow for a lot of interesting gameplay, but because we have ways of countering them, it works out. And because the wielder can't have, a rapid strike with a drum, their firepower is limited. It balances out very nicely, and it really works out well. But you should definitely have that written down. So if somebody shows up with a huge shield and wants to, run a 35-round drummed strife on it, you can say, no, you can't use that with a shield, and if they complain, well, they can go ahead and complain, but it's in the rules, it's written down. And I recommend having, the rules there, and having, printed out so people can look at it, you can hand it around, you can make a big poster of it, whatever. But have it there so that it's more easy to enforce. Games. You should sit down and decide, okay, what kind of games are we going to play? And this also is going to vary depending on the type of game that you have. So ultra stock, you can get away with things that are actually direct elimination. You get hit and you have to go wait until the end of the round. Because they tend to be smaller groups, they tend to be very focused, and tend to be fairly quick rounds. Whereas the big games that are like the wars we do, where we've got 30, 40 people, you don't want to be the person that got tagged out 5 seconds into the round and now has to sit out for the next half hour while everyone else has fun. And so we tend to do resurrection battles. You've got infinite respawns, you just have to go respawn. But the respawns are different. Sometimes it's 5-second respawn, sometimes it's a 10-second, sometimes it's a 30-second, sometimes it's in waves, sometimes it's immediate. As soon as you get to the respawn point, you're right back in again. And you should have all of the scenarios. I recommend writing out the exact scenarios so that you can explain it easily and people can look it up, and you can have a catalog of different games and people can vote on, we want to do this one, we want to do that one, we'd like to do this one, but we'd like a variation. It helps if it's all written down, so you have a book that's got your rules and all of your game scenarios written out in it. Makes organization much, much smoother. And it allows you, once again, to enforce things, because if it's written down and people have read it, then if somebody is breaking the rules, you can call them on them and say, no, you're breaking the rules, and you need to stop that. That is going to fall to you, again, as the person who's organizing it. Conflict resolution is going to be your responsibility. If somebody is breaking the rules, if somebody is hurting people, if somebody is doing something that they shouldn't be, people should be able to come to you and say, hey, we're not happy about this, or this person's doing this, or hey, he's not taking his hits, and you're going to need to deal with that. Or you're going to need to delegate it to somebody who is good at that. It doesn't necessarily have to be the person organizing it, but it is your job to make sure that somebody is in charge of it. Advertising is going to be a huge part of this. People can't come to your Nerf war if they don't know that there is a Nerf war. So, Facebook is the first place to start. We have Facebook groups for all of our local groups. So the Pacific Northwest Nerf Club has a group. The Olympic Foam Society has a group. There's the private mini groups that have formed, have their own little clubs so that we can schedule things, and we can have events that people get reminded of in their Facebook, and their phone pops up an alert, an event this weekend. And it's a really, really good idea to start a club, so that when people ask, hey, what is this? You can say, oh, check us out on Facebook. So it's a good idea to then have, if you can afford it, if it's an option, business cards with the Facebook group on it, or whoever the contact is for the event, or flyers if you want to do it that way, with all the information. Here's what we do, here's how often we do it, here's what we allow, here are our basic rule sets. You will need eye protection, you'll need this, you'll need that. Coming up with a regular schedule is also fairly important for that, so that people know, all right, it's every 4 weeks there's another Nerf war. So that they can schedule time off, so that they can look ahead of their schedule and see, well, is it going to conflict with this? If having it where people can schedule events in the future is a really, really good idea. Other advertising opportunities, I believe Craigslist has a place where you can post events. Most cities actually have a Facebook, or maybe not a Facebook, but a web page or something where public events can be posted. There's also, some places you can post things at bus stops or the city center. There's a billboard where you can put up your flyer and you can advertise Nerf War coming up. If you're in the university, they almost always have bulletin boards where you can post things, and cities usually have rules about what kind of flyers are allowed and where they are allowed and how long they can be up, and keep all that aware. But the more people that know about it, the better. Word of mouth is also a good idea. Tell your friends, post it on Facebook, say, hey, I'm having a Nerf event, who's interested? Because friends of friends of friends might hear about it through Facebook, and then they bring their kids, and their kids tell their friends, and then they bring their friends. Yeah, it can go real quick, pretty fast. So that. Loaner equipment is also a really good idea if you're just getting the event started, because if you're in a public park, people are just going to wander up and go, hey, what's going on here? Can I join? And if they don't have any blasters, then they're not going to be able to join. But if you have a bin full of cheap blasters you picked up at Goodwill, they can at least join in and have fun. Pick up some strong arms, pick up some simple stuff that anybody can pick up and use, but that are going to be good enough that people won't just get discouraged. If you hand them a bin of Mavericks and they're up against people with rapid strikes, they're probably not going to have a whole lot of fun, and they will either get discouraged and leave, or ideally they'll get really interested and they'll go get their own blasters. Definitely have loaner darts. We always have a big bin of them. Several people now bring bins of darts that they've collected from events. You can now get 1,000 darts for $26 from either Lytake or NS Strike. So most people consider darts to be disposable at this point. They don't even bother to collect their darts at the end. They just let them go into the loaner bin and buy another 1,000. But it's a really good idea. And eye protection. Absolutely have spare eye protection with you. Go to Goodwill, buy all the sunglasses if necessary. Depending on the level of the game, super stock and down, you can get away with just sunglasses. Ultra stock, you're probably going to want something that's actually meant to be protective. But it's a good idea to have, because, again, if people just wander up and they want to play, they really need to have eye protection, so you should have spare eye protection around. And the last one is, for legal reasons, you may need to look into liability, either in the form of club insurance. There are plenty of insurances for that for most sporting events. The sport clubs have insurance, things like frisbee golf clubs and medieval recreation groups, and all of those groups all have to have, shooting clubs, archery clubs. They all have to have liability insurance for in case they put an arrow through something they weren't supposed to put an arrow through, or put a bullet hole in something. So you might have to have that for some locations. A lot of public parks won't care. Other locations like state parks, like when we go to Fort Worden and Fort Flagler, they tend to get a little more picky when large groups come in. They expect you to have group insurance, just to keep them safe. And you might have a sign-in sheet with a waiver that says, I realize that I am participating in a contact sport and that I could get injured, and I will not hold anyone responsible for what may happen to me, which isn't entirely legally binding, but it is just a good idea. Especially if somebody shows up and absolutely refuses to sign it. That's not somebody you want participating. So those are the things that I think you really need to cover. If I've missed anything, go ahead and toss it in here. Another thing that I've mentioned it a couple of times, and I will mention it one last time here at the end, conflict resolution. It is going to fall to you. People are involved, so there is the potential for problems. You may have somebody show up to a stock Nerf war that wants to wield their 150 FPS caliber and shoot little kids. And you're going to need to be the person that says, no, that's not acceptable. That's not allowed. and deal with it. And if they become a serious problem, you may have to escalate it to somebody with a higher authority. And don't be afraid to do that. We've had to do that when people showed up to events and were causing trouble either. I don't think we've ever had to do it for a player, but we have had to do it where some drunk crazy guy showed up and was yelling and screaming about how we were indoctrinating children to be killers and that we were the reason his brother was killed in Afghanistan, and simply refused to go away and was getting angrier and angrier, and we're starting to get worried that he might, attack somebody. He actually threatened me. And so we called the police, and the police came and dealt with him. So keep in mind that kind of thing may happen, and if you are the organizer, it's going to be on you. You're gonna have to deal with it, or once again, you're going to have somebody there who can. You should talk to the people who come and say who's willing to deal with any escalations, and there will probably be at least one person who says, yeah, I deal with that at work, I'm willing to do it, or yeah, I'm prepared, whatever. But hopefully you won't ever have to do that. Your games will be fun and awesome, and everyone will show up and have a good time, and everybody will love it and will tell other friends, and your event will grow, and it will be fantastic. So there you have it. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, if you think I missed anything or gave some really horrible advice, go ahead and put it down in the comments. I will have this list up on my Facebook page, as well as probably in the description of this video. And if more people give me more ideas, I will add to it. And so on. So there you go. I hope you all are able to start the Nerf war of your dreams this summer and have an absolute blast. I hope to hear all about it. Definitely send me pictures from any of your events. That's the sort of thing that I can cover in the featured fan stuff. Group pictures from various events that were started using my advice. I would love that. That'd be awesome. So yeah, there you have it. Thank you for watching.